Hello, my name is Amanda Swana, and I am a managing director at PowerPoint Lifestyles. But I'd like to believe that I have um, a bit of a story prior to me being a managing director, and I am born from the Eastern Cape in a very small village called Lusigisigi, that is now developed into being a township. And I then moved to Durban, not out of my own free will, but because of educational purposes. So my family decided to move us to KZN Durban for schooling purposes, and this was around primary school. I then found a bit of joy in KwaZulu-Natal, where I stayed a bit longer. And I share this because my siblings have since moved to Johannesburg, to Gauteng, and I'm still the old log who decides, no, I'm not going to move from KZN, not because of the weather, but because I found some sort of route. So I did my high school at the Bluff, then moved into University of KwaZulu-Natal to study a psychology degree. I completed my master's and then branched off into the world of work just after my master's into the agricultural sector. And I have since progressed, obviously from a careers point of view, progressed from agricultural sector, used also production and also warehousing and logistics. But I then found myself in business. Had no desire, no intention of being in business. I grew up believing that I'm either going to be a doctor or I'm going to be a teacher. I wasn't really drawn to the nursing profession. So I thought maybe a doctor or a teacher. And somewhere along the line, I also believed I was going to be an accountant. So I think with the combination of those desires and interests, I found myself in business. I left my previous employer before branching into entrepreneurship with the intention of going to do my studies. I had hoped that I would get the opportunity to do my PhD and sort of focus in the academia stream, mainly because I was used to research, and research was much more easier. And I thought, okay, if I could make money out of this and have a profession out of this, I'll continue with academia. But as we would have it, the PhD path wasn't feasible for my current economic demands and obviously the family commitments. So I thought, okay, I'll do a bit of academia and a bit of consulting. And that's how I initially started in business, with a bit of consulting for clients, mainly on the human resources aspect. So just to go back a bit, I studied industrial psychology with my master's, but I found myself in an HR role. And most industrial psychologists will tell you and advocate that they are not HR practitioners, they are psychologists. So I found myself on the other end of the coin, where I did HR, human resources. And I continued with human resources as a profession, or merging into human resources, and sort of neglected the industrial psychology component because unplanned happenstance, that's where I found myself, and I had to make the most out of it. But I started enjoying human resources, and I thought, if I consult, maybe that's when I'd find my niche, because it's a broad category, it's a broad profession, and what would I be specializing on? And the speciality sort of found root and took shape when consulting, and realized I enjoy mostly around organizational development, strategic human resources, as opposed to the operational side. So consulted for, I think it was 2 years without operating, and then eventually took that leap of faith and started business, registered the business, and committed myself. I say it's a leap of faith because I had no idea. The version of business that we are given in a textbook is not the reality. So I had no idea of what business really was. Yes, I understood that I wanted to be a consultant, but business is just not just myself and in my individual capacity, but business has systems, compliance, and so forth. So the first year of business, I would describe it as, a lot of unlearning, a lot of becoming, a lot of uncertainties, but it was pleasant chaos because there was so much learning. And I enjoyed that year mostly because I had to unlearn habits, or your professional habits. I had to unlearn. I had to be more independent. I had to rely on a lot of my own internal voices, because when you branch into business, and most people don't tell you that, even your mentors, they sort of allow you to jump into the deep. And when you branch into business, you later find out that you have to have a lot of willpower and self-motivation. And this is something that I always thought I had. I always thought I can motivate myself to do anything. It was until I started business and I realized that self-motivation is so critical when it comes to business, because sometimes the figures don't make sense. Sometimes the clients aren't queuing up to do business with you. So you have to continue deciding, why do I do this? And why do I keep doing this? And it took me a whole year to figure out, why am I actually doing this? So for the first 3 months, it was literally autopilot until reality started setting in. The savings started running out and the clients were not queuing in. And I thought, okay, I need to find a reason. Why am I actually doing this? Why am I not taking back my CV into the market? Because the credentials are there, the experience is there, and I probably might have a good chance of getting, back into the world of work. Why do I want to go into business? And the reason why I stuck it through till today wasn't because I knew that I could make a difference in the trade. It was bigger than that. I actually genuinely wanted to change lives, and lives being the employees. There was something that stood out to me, to say, if I could create a safe environment, a safe work environment where employees are empowered to develop, and obviously at a pace that meets the business demands, but to empower and to mentor employees. And that's always been the business strategy that I adopted was, yes, the employees have their certain skills and qualifications, but what is the difference as a leader that I would make into them is helping them find their own voices. And this is something that most businesses expect you to harness as you go along the way. And most leaders neglect that, to say, it's not just because you are paying them well. You need to help employees empower themselves so that they become better leaders. And in the consulting environment, that's what's key. They are the ones that are talking to clients. They are the ones that are engaging with clients. And what becomes paramount is the confidence for them to talk to the clients, to service the clients, because it's one thing to know what to do. It's another thing to confidently express and service your clients. And that's where I've always found that, from a leadership point of view, is find a way in which you can empower the individuals to become better than you. And this is something that I've really enjoyed at first, because you think to yourself, maybe it's a risk, it's a business risk if they're better than me, or maybe, they'll start opening up their own consulting firms. And I've found that the sense of loyalty is not because you pay them well or they could make more money out of the business. The sense of loyalty is, one, your employees are seen, they're empowered, and they feel safe, psychologically safe, emotionally safe. And also from a progression point of view, you've got a mind map as to how they're going to progress in this business. What is their future in this business? And how do they add value into this business? So that's to say, I wanted to change lives. And that's why I keep doing this. So that's why I continue to show up in that way. Is not necessarily change the lives of the clients, but more so my responsibilities to the employees and their lives and how they could become better people. That also filtered out into our service model. I think most of our clients would attest is, we try to partner up with their businesses. We really try to partner up with your business. Although you're looking for human resource solutions, we genuinely want to understand, what is your business strategy? What is your objectives? What are you trying to achieve? Because if you ask us to appoint a civil engineer, for example, we can go into the market and get you the most qualified, the most experienced civil engineer. But from a human relations point of view, let's talk about the soft skills. Let's talk about the ethical side. Let's talk about the governance. What do you want this person to breed out into your organization? Because they could be good on paper, but these are human beings interacting. So that's when we start looking at, in our screening processes, we look at behavioral patterns. We look at your value system as the candidate. What do you believe drives you? What is your general ethical guidelines? What are your ethical fundamentals apart from your your civil engineering degree and your projects that you've done, but let's talk about you as a person. What do you want out of the employer, and what is the type of business progression that you're looking towards? So we've always advocated for human relations, strategic human relations, but also from a point of understanding the person, because that's the person you need to deal with. You don't deal with a civil engineer, you deal with Amanda. You don't deal with me as my profession. My first point of encounter with you is who I am. And that will always be my default settings under pressure, because under pressure, I lose the mask and I start showing up as I am. And that's what we've advocated for clients to say is, when you're doing recruitment, look at the individual from an individual point of view, but also look at them from a professional point of view. And that combination, if it complements what you're looking for, then you've got a winner. Look at the potential of the individual and look how you could train and develop them, because there are clients that have found the value in saying, that person might not have all the essential competencies, but because you keep flagging potential and the alignment of who the person is, we could train them and develop them. And that's what we've worked with. So from who I am might seem like a whole big story, but this is my identity. This is what I found to become my identity, my work. I'm very family orientated. My family means the world to me. And I say this not because I've got any children as yet, but because my siblings, my mother, well, my late grandmother, but family means the world to me. I find myself drawn to, if I make it, then it gives a bit of hope to the others. And if I can do it, it means it's confirmation that they can, because we come from the same background. We come from the same upbringing, the same value system, and the same resources, limited as they were, but we come from the same resources. And if I could make something out of it, they too can. So family means the world to me. I'm very, very family orientated. And I look to find a team that also thrives on family support, and also looking how to then they could empower their own family. So family means much more to me than I wouldn't say from a social aspect. Yes, I enjoy networking, engaging, but I always feel like my accountability partners are my family. Everybody needs accountability partners, because as human beings we can really, go off a tangent, and it's not until you start thriving in business and your business is developing, you realize you could easily become uncontrollable if you don't have accountability partners, because you look at the bank and you think, okay, I can do much more than I could do last year. So you need accountability partners that will remind you, wait, this was not part of the plan, or this was never part of the vision. This is not what you sold to us when we backed you up. So the accountability partners are key. I'm not much of a social aspect. I don't do a lot of outdoor events or outdoor social meetings. I try to limit it to business engagements and keep a very close-knit circle. I call them my inner circle, because when you're in business, you also have to be very careful around how much you expose yourself to as an individual, because you're not only responsible for yourself, but you're also responsible for the employees. You wake up every day knowing that I'm not representing just the business, I'm representing the employees as a leader. And they have bought into this. You've sold them a vision, and therefore you're responsible to honoring that vision each and every day. So I don't find myself really being out as a social butterfly or a public figure, as one would say it. I find that I do well with my inner circle. I do well with my accountability partners, and it's probably safer that way. I don't know who I'd become if I was given the blank check and the loose leaves. I don't know who I'd become. I'd rather not find out as well. So who I am is my family, my business, my work. I'd like to think I'm committed to my work because of how much weight it bears on other people, not so much myself. I could easily shut the door and decide I'm going to rewrite the script, I'm going to try something else, or I'm just going to give up. But what keeps me going is more so my accountability towards the other individuals that I have given a vision to, and I've thought this is what they need to commit to. If they're committing to it, I could easily do the same. My very first job, let's say my very first professional job is different from my very first job. So where I got paid, my very first job was I would do hair nails. This was in varsity, and I call it a job because it paid the bills. It put food in my little tiny fridge at Ray's. So that was the very first job. I would do nails and hair, brace through it and try and, be creative. And then I moved into promotions, which was paying much more better. And when you're in postgrad, the demands are higher. You need to dress differently. You need to start showing up for other social sporting activities. So I did promotions for most of my postgrad year. But my very first official job, and I'm entirely grateful, I will never forget, was the role of an HR officer. So when I completed my master's, I applied for internships like everybody else, which was our peers, because when you complete your master's, you still have to do that one additional year of the internship in order for you to then be certified as an industrial psychologist. So I did my very first internship year. I say first because that's not where I completed. So I did my first internship here at SASRI, South African Sugar Research Institute, and I was mentored by Lovely. My manager has been a big landmark into who I have become and how I handle myself in the world of work. So I stayed with SASRI for 2 years as an HR officer. I then moved out of SASRI into consulting. That's when I started doing various roles in consulting. And then I had a bit of a structured consulting role where I had to neglect some of the other clients, which was also in warehouse and logistics. So I stuck it out in warehouse and logistics for a good 2 years. And that's when I decided, okay, I can't do this full time. I'm now stabilized into entrepreneurship, and that's where I've always been. I would say from a professional point of view, it was paying our first batch of salaries. Employing them was not the big deal, because I relied on the fact that if they are employed, we then are going to push business. But the biggest accomplishment was setting out that first paycheck to the employees. And I'll tell you why. I didn't think we were going to make it. It was the first month, and now I've got all these employees and they've been working the entire month. I remember because payday is on the 25th, and I remember on the 20th saying, I don't think we are going to make it, because obviously the numbers were not making sense. And I remember just in the nick of time, I think the invoice was paid off on the 23rd, and I was so excited. I could have easily cashed it out to keep it, because I thought, what if it disappears? There's hackers everywhere. What if we don't make, And on the 25th, when we ran that first batch, I was so grateful. I was so grateful because there were people who believed in this vision, and I had nothing to back it up with. Absolutely nothing to back it up with. So releasing that first batch for me was the biggest achievement. And obviously you get used to the pay runs, but I'm still there. I'm still on that very first payday, and the employees will tell you, my team knows, on the 25th is the most beautiful day for me. It's the most beautiful day for me, because although it means nothing to them because they're doing their jobs, but for me, it certifies that, it confirms and validates why we started. So that's always been a big achievement for me. And I know that it means nothing for me personally, but it means the world to see that each and every 25th, we still make it. There are companies who couldn't pay employees and salaries, and we do. So that means a lot for me. I hold myself entirely responsible for that, whether there's business or not. I'd rather release from my own savings to make sure that the guys that are showing up every day get the commitment that I've made to them. That's the commitment I made to them. I've never promised them a fancy job or fancy office. I've always said my responsibility is to make sure that you are paid on time, and we try to make this business sustainable. So business sustainability is personal for me, very personal. It has to be from my mother. So my mother is someone who's very, very calm. She doesn't shout. And it's funny because none of her children have taken after her. She's very mono-preserved. And I remember when I started going to business, she said to me, try to not lose yourself. Try to allow yourself to remain authentic to who you are, because money can change people. And I thought, bring the change. I need the change. I need the change. But I later understood what she meant, because at that time, it was wish-wash. It really meant nothing to me. I thought, What do you mean money changes people? Of course we need the change. Look at the circumstances, look at the situations. But I understood the depth of that statement when she said, try to be yourself in any room that you find yourself in, and don't let money or people change who you are. And it was definitely coming from a religious point of view, because her biggest drive as a parent has always been, you are not accountable to me, you're accountable to God. And one day you'll have to account. And I won't be there. So it's always been, when I try to remind myself, because you could easily get lost in the wave. You could easily get lost in the wave when you sit in rooms and are deemed of a different level or different stature. You could find yourself losing yourself just to fit in. So I've always tried to remember that. Don't lose yourself. Don't lose who you are. Don't allow people to change who you are. My biggest challenge has been where you always have to remind yourself that you're doing the best that you can, because you try to be so ambitious, you try to do as much as you can, and sometimes you need to slow down and say to yourself, I'm doing the best that I can in this moment. So sometimes you find yourself trying to do much more and more of yourself and give out of yourself until you get to a point where you say, I'm doing the best that I can with what I have. Doesn't mean that you're less ambitious, doesn't mean that you're settling, but there are instances where you have to say, this is the best that I could do. And that's always been my challenge. I have to remind myself, and it's so intentional that my accountability partners have always said, remember, this is the best that you could do. Because I always say, I haven't done enough. We need to do more. No. Even if it's a social setting, we have to do more. And until they come and they become the sense of a reason that says, you're doing the best that you can with what you have. And sometimes that might not mean anything to the people you're trying to attain for, but in that moment, that's where you get your sense of peace and say, I'm doing the best that I can with what I have. Yeah. I still struggle with that a lot. I still find myself going above and beyond and thinking, maybe if I had just done a bit more, maybe if I had pushed a little harder with that client, we would have, sealed the deal. Maybe if I was able to convince them much more. So contentment in saying I've done the best that I can. And what the best is, I still haven't navigated to that. I still haven't. I advocate for them to find themselves, their own voices. And we have this in the office where I say, what is your voice? If we're sitting in a business meeting or a brainstorming meeting, I could present, or the managers could present, or the senior consultants could present, but I'd like to know what the officer thinks. What is their voice in this? What is their perspective in this? Because if someone can own their voice, if someone can have a contribution in any discussion, it could be about a client solution, it could be about a technical issue, it could be about a system review. What is your voice? Because when you have a sense of responsibility to what value you've contributed, you become custodian of that. So find your voice, find who you are, because your work is not your identity. You'll lose yourself if you think that your 8 to 5 is who you are in your entirety, and that is why God created you. There's much more to you than just the 8 to 5. Find yourself, find your voice, and see how at PowerPoint we could also partner up with you. So it's always find your voice in everything that we do. Find yourself and know who you are. So it's always been around who you are and complement what you do. Who you are is first, and complement what you do with who you are. And therefore, you'll always be original. You won't be putting on a mask, because when you start putting on a mask, at 4 o'clock when you're driving home, you are exhausted because you've had to pretend with us the entire day. You've had to pretend like you know everything, and yet you don't know. And you've missed the opportunity of asking your peers and your colleagues, what do you mean when you say this? We even have jokes when someone shares a very big English word and everyone's like, yo, what is that? Let that become a very safe environment where people feel safe to say, I don't know that. What is that? Because we've got administrators, we've got officers, we've got consultants, we've got senior consultants, obviously there's a learning channel. Because the administrator who's just joined the team is not going to understand all the concepts and the systems and the technicalities. So my biggest drive to the employees and the team is find your voice and be confident in the room. Confidence is so important in consulting. It's so important because you're sitting with clients every day. and you have to come across as someone who at least understands what you're presenting. So confidence is very important. Find your voice. Know who you are so that you're not always falling back into a default and we're thinking, this is not who we thought you were. Try to really remain consistent in who you are. I love reading books. I read a lot of books. I read books, mostly your business related, but also religious books. So I come from the Christian faith, or I'm a believer. So I read a lot of Christian books, but also business books, your leadership, motivational books. And mainly because when you are leading or when you're an entrepreneur, you need to have a well to draw from. It's your mentors, yes, it's your other entrepreneur colleagues, but you also need your own personal well to draw from, because sometimes your colleagues are not around, sometimes your peers are not around, so you have to have your internal well to draw from. So I do a lot of reading, motivational reading. I also find a sense of peace, events management and coordination. I enjoy planning events, your weddings from a corporate point, because I also do have an events management business that I run with other teams. So other employees and other colleagues as well. So we do events, your social events, your corporate events. So I enjoy that. And I always say that's not work for me. That's my escape. The fact that it makes money for us is good, but that's an escape for me, because moving away from that corporate technical environment and going to a soft, putting together flower arrangements, seeing a bride walk in and think to themselves, this is beautiful. So putting together an event is lovely. The who would definitely be my family, my mother being a strong source of inspiration. She was a single mother who raised 4 children, and I admire her strength. And sometimes I ask myself when we engage with her, because now we are friends. She's not a mother, and now we are friends. We talk. I'd ask her, how did you manage 4 children? And at that time, we never thought we were struggling as such. And for me, that always said something about the way in which she carried the household. And I aspire for that strength, for that resilience. And so she's a big inspiration. And also, it would be my siblings as well. So family mostly. And also the people that are around me, my accountability partners. The next 5 years, I'd like to see us branch into training and development more. So it's a new service that we have offered. So I'd really like to see us expand in training and development. So skills development as a unit, it's quite micro at this level. So we'd like to get more courses into our library and to expand that business. Our biggest target market has been SMEs, and we'd like to expand, not necessarily change the target market, but to expand into a wider reach, mainly because we do strongly believe that SMEs need the support. Whether you are in engineering, whether you're in manufacturing, whether you're in accounting services or legal services, if you're starting off as an SME, compliance should be the least of your problems. Compliance and human relations should really be the least of your problems. You should then specialize on your focus area. If it's legal, do legal. If it's accounting, do accounting. If it's engineering, do engineering. If it's logistics, do logistics. So we really still want to partner up with SMEs and provide that human resource, human capital hub. But I'd like to see us tap into other markets as well. We haven't tapped into a few sectors, and we are looking into how we can tap into those sectors. So it's definitely increasing our training portfolio and capacity, and also widening the spread, the spectrum, and widening the net for other SMEs. From a point of view, I think we'd like to tap into government as well from a career development point of view. We've had quite a few studies done, research done around how career council is not advocated for from a government perspective. In other words, the public school. So we'd really like to tap into that and offer career counseling services for KZN based schools. So we've been fortunate around community leaders bringing us and saying, okay, maybe do a career development talk, but we'd really like to see the formalization of career counseling. If you look at the matric pass rate, there's guys who are sitting at home who've had bachelor's degree, but because the subject choice doesn't speak to a particular profession, So when they're going to university and they look at the subject choice versus what they have studied and passed very well, they can't get into that program because the subject choice was wrong from the very first start. So we'd really like to look into career counseling from a school level, and particularly government schools. Find purpose in what you do. Whatever you do, do it with intention. Because when you do it with intention, you get much more joy in what you do. You are able to handle any pressures or any adversaries because you know why you're doing something. Don't do it because Angela's doing it. Don't do it because Amanda's doing it. Find out what is your niche, what is your voice. Find what your purpose is and do it with joy. Do it with gladness, not because there's health reasons. Yes, there's health reasons. I mean, if you're happier, you glow much better. But find purpose and intention in the things that you do. You'll find that even when life throws you a curveball, you're able to ride the wave. You know, when life throws off or pushes back, because life can push back. Life can push back hard. Life can give you so many no's where you think to yourself, I'm done with this. But when life gives you those no's, it's your internal self-motivation, because you ask yourself, why am I doing what I did? Why did I start this? Why did I even branch into this project? Why did I even decide to pursue this career? Why am I doing what I'm doing is so important. And it can't have an external voice. It can't be because of someone else, because they'll let you down, because they've got their own dreams and ambitions. It has to be because you have a sense of contentment and you have validated yourself enough. Validate yourself first before looking for affirmations from other people, because you might never be satisfied. And we were sharing this the other days, the element of social media. Some people post for validation and you're never satisfied. But if you validate yourself enough, you'll be satisfied and you'll be able to maneuver and navigate around the resilience, the resistance and the challenges that come with it. Because life will give you pushbacks.